Remember how last January I promised that the first reviews of each year would be on a bad figure? I kind of realized a flaw in that where I may not have a bad figure to talk about at the start of the year. Well, that's not a problem this time, and it brings me great pain because Wave 3 QC strikes once again. Oh, I can't even with this wave. Why? Why are you like this? The first two had no notable QC issues. Not every figure was perfect, but what flaws they had were not that serious, nor were they pervasive like they've been with almost every figure in this trash fire of a wave. It's Legacy Armada Starscream. Let me get this up front. This thing looks so cool. Why? Why is it this way? You look so good. You could be so good, but you're failing your mother and I am so goddamn tired of every potentially great Wave 3 figure crashing and burning in the quality department. Hasbro must have changed factories or something. Or they just fired every last QC tester along with cranking the price of all the figures to maximize their profits. Something has to have gone awry at Hasbro for them to be putting out products like this. And for some reason, I have two of these. I don't know why, man. They just keep showing up at my house. I don't think I bought two of these, but distribution is so bad that I've been buying these online at like 5 different websites, so it's entirely possible that I forgot what was getting bought where and grabbed this thing twice by mistake. So it's belated Christmas present time. If you would like to win yourself a likely borked on the QC like everything else from Wave 3 figure that at least looks sick as hell, then send me an email at PerspectiveEndGiveaways@gmail.com titled Legacy QC Sucks. The contest is only for today, January 11th, 2023. So if you see this video on a later date, then I'm sorry, it's too late to enter. All I need in that email is the entry phrase, and if you want to be announced as a winner, as you might want that kept private, as well as whether or not you want the box signed by me. Don't waste your time writing anything more than that in the email because I use a random number generator to tell me which number email wins. So I don't wind up reading any of those. But you know me, I'm happy to respond to any comments you make in the video itself. So that will get my attention just fine. As always, I will cover shipping. However, I have recently discovered that some countries charge an import tax equal not only to the 100% value of the item, but the 100% value of the shipping. Which means that if you win and you live in a country like that, then picking up your $30 prize could cost you upwards of $70 in taxes. This already happened with the Space Bumblebee giveaway. It's not just something I heard online. The countries like this are rare, but if you are outside the US, winning this giveaway could actually be worse than just buying the figure yourself. I don't want to waste your money on criminal taxes like that. Anyways, back to the figure that I'm about to slag off that you are trying to win. The look of this figure is so damn awesome. This is such a dynamic sculpt and design. It even makes the pathetic little baby wings look sick. I mean, these are borderline cute and pathetic, yet they enhance the intimidating vibe even more. And despite the extreme concentration of the red on this figure, it doesn't look plain for it. No, I look at this and think, logically, this is too much red. And yet in practice, it doesn't feel like he's wearing onesie thermal underwear. He just looks badass. And honestly, I think this could look slightly more awesome with one tweak. When I put the arms out to the side, it really frames his head in a cool way. His peripheral vision is already obliterated by the shoulder cannons, which you can actually lay across his back to fix, though you'd be making him less accurate to his show model, though I do suppose I'm also arguing for a non-accurate change to him anyways. And with these down, it does look a good bit more lame. But with his ability to look side to side in his normal mode already being absolute cancer, then the shoulder pylons wouldn't cause him any more trouble. If you just hinged it here, this could be a completely optional look. Though I'm sure I come across like an absolute psychopath right now because I'm arguing for a completely unexpected feature to be added to the figure. Like, why should they do this when no one but me has ever thought of it before? And it looks good enough as it is anyways. The sculpt is insanely dynamic, and it even has the flip-up shoulder cannons he had in the show. I will say that this is a relatively lazy interpretation of those though, as it's missing the black stripe at the front, and without that, this looks so incredibly plain, which wouldn't feel like such a kick in the teeth if the QC weren't screwed up like usual. One last positive thing about this figure before I really start hammering on it for its failures. Despite the lack of pigment on the tips of his cannons, the figure is overall painted very nicely. Anything that needed to change color for the most part got it, and it's all crisp and clean. Okay, now to whip this like a mouthy school child from the 30s. Every tolerance on this thing is several hairs over too loose. It's not a floppy mess like some figures are, but I have never had any confidence that a pose I put this thing in will hold. It constantly feels like it's a mouse's sneeze away from toppling over. And I'm fairly certain that for once, I am 100% accurate in stating that there is a literally universal QC problem with this figure. I have been burned every time before, as while the QC on the others were consistently bad, they weren't universal. This time, it absolutely is. There is something wrong with the way the left leg on this figure was sculpted or manufactured that causes it to pop off the mushroom peg whenever you rotate the leg. I have been in voice calls with people on Discord who were in the middle of saying, my figure doesn't have that problem, only for me to hear them go, halfway through the word problem, and then say, oh, it did just pop off. It might have been an accident, I'll see, oh, okay, yeah, that's obnoxious. Maybe I'm wrong again. I've been wrong every time before now, but I don't think so this time. Now that's not it for the QC, there is still more to come. Then I have to say that there are a few baffling design decisions in general. Like, if you peg the cockpit into the cock place, then you lose access to the waist swivel. Also, there seems to be a place in the torso that the forward fins are supposed to slot into that just doesn't fit, though that could just be me seeing some skeletonizing of the part and attributing a function to it that it just doesn't have. But that's enough of the problems for now. The head sculpt is dynamite. What a glorious rendition of the star mug. The word I have to describe this is crisp. And not just in the paint job. For all of Hasbro's latest faults in QC, slapping some paint on the figure does not seem to be one of them. At least I would say that if his forehead gem weren't fuzzy and his chin weren't scratchy with a mole under his lip. According to this stupid chart I found, it means that you're supposed to be quiet. I didn't need more evidence that stuff like this is full of shit, but thank you for screaming it to me. But no, it's everything. The lines are all sharper than typical for Starscream, the colors are all deeper rather than the charcoal gray and darker charcoal gray. The contrast between the black of the helmet and the white of the face strikes. And what's this? A con without red eyes? Well, that's gonna make some people very happy. This is Starscream's head with every soft feature removed, and I'm here for it. So, the look of this thing is extremely good. Not only is it incredibly accurate to the version of the character it's portraying, more so than most any other Legacy figure, which you may say is a double standard considering the G1ification most of these things went through, but I'd say that this already fits a chug aesthetic way more naturally on its own. But it also just looks badass. It is a rendition of the character so cool, it's almost impossible to reconcile it as a version of the G1 guy. No, this is the honorable anime warrior Starscream. As much as I may want this to be my Windblade miniseries Starscream. However, the QC is trash. Big surprise from Wave 3. Then you got his accessories, and these are decent. His wing sword is now an entirely separate piece, which defeats some of the fun, but at least he can wield it now without becoming lopsided. And then he's got the Star Saber, which as a kid I thought was a really fun idea. And now as an adult, with all the joy and happiness in my heart long since dead, I just think it's stupid as hell. Really? You're just gonna beat someone to death with 3 blunt children and call that a sword? At least they tried to justify it by turning the children into lasers, a statement as both horrifying as it is insane. And then the posing on Not Dinobot here is great. Head is extremely limited, unless you flip the shoulder cannons down, at which point it becomes excellent for a flyer, with maximum tilt up. Though it's mounted behind his shoulder line, so as you start to turn it, it looks less and less natural. A more reasonable variant of the hot rod shoulders that don't crowd his head, elbows have maximum bendage. Sword-wielding wrists, which is awesome given the character, though they're not fully intended, so you are cheating it. Waist has to be unpegged to work, hips are extremely unimpeded in all directions, over 90 knees, which you could cheat for maximum if the calf doors weren't giant bitches, and then good feet with a toe down, heel down, and pivot, though they are one of the loosest joints on his body and make standing him a pain. So this is all pretty much above average, except for the waist, and it's got a few foibles, but when all is said and done, it can strike the dynamic as hell poses you want the lithe swordsman from Armada to do. The transformation, unfortunately, sucks though. It wouldn't be so bad, but these calf doors, as alluded to before, have got to be the most aggressively hateful things I've ever run into. You can either have the fingers of a literal baby, because no one else has digits that can fit these holes, or you can use tools to open these. Now you might say, don't go in from that direction, go in from the top. Excellent idea, except, seemingly out of pure spite, they put a slope on the top running away from you. It's like a shield designed specifically to prevent you from doing the thing you need to do. This part is offensively frustrating, and I'm kind of thinking about either clipping off all the plastic around this, or just ripping the leg doors off and throwing them away. Outside of that, this is mostly just the overly simple transformation of the original 2002 figure, just with the irritation factor turned up several decibels. And the result is an excellent rendition of his awful nonsensical jet mode. That probably couldn't fly if it didn't have like 6 separate rocket engines strapped to it. And seriously, why are the backs of his wrists so plain looking? You know you could have sculpted this with any level of detail to not look like a toy joint, and it wouldn't have impacted its cost in production at all. Also, no rear stabilizer. This boy is destined for a love affair with the ground the second he tries to take off. It's also really goofy looking from the side view, but I promised you one last extreme QC issue, and you'd think that a joint problem would be nearly impossible to negatively impact the alt mode because the whole thing is locked together. But you'd be wrong about both those thoughts, because as soon as I pick this up, this happens. It doesn't matter how hard I try to peg the rear section in, the whole figure just falls in half. It sometimes holds for like a second, but then you move it or just shiver and it falls down again. This is such an unreasonable problem to have. A figure should not do this. But instead, we're dealing with a Hasbro that at some point along the way seems to have given up making Wave 3 as good as we pay for. This figure could be excellent. Hell, with all its deficiencies, this is still probably the definitive Armada Starscream now, but it's sabotaged at every step along the way. It can hold a pose, but it teeters on the edge of slumping over and will do so if you aren't careful. It transforms way worse than all reason says it should, both because the stupid doors on the legs, but just also because it seems like this thing was designed without clearances in mind, and then the alt mode would be a solid approximation of the fun, goofy-ass thing he's supposed to be if it weren't desperately trying to untransform itself every time you handle it. This is nowhere near as bad as the Soundwave from the first video of last year. This didn't even earn a spot on the worst of year list, but if I was going to substitute anything on that list for something else, it would have been this. Hasbro, clean up your goddamn QC. I know you are apparently struggling right now, which is impressive that you of all companies can't figure out how to turn a buck, but we deserve better than figures that fall apart in our hands, and it's not because you aren't charging enough for quality. And that's not half what I have to say, but it's enough what I have to say. And I know, you know, what everyone else tells you to do at the end of these videos. So, if you liked what you saw here, please do that. And if you'd like to take it a step further, then please share this video with any friend you think may be interested. I hope you all enjoyed listening to me waste your time.